Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Nobody's willing to talk, so welcome everyone. There are a few people still at coffee. Maybe they will join once we have. It's often like this when we start a call. Yeah. So welcome to everyone, and welcome to that session. So the objective, well, let's talk about the title first now. It's called The Approaches to Build the Negotiation Capacity of Humanitarians. And I'm trying in this session to focus a bit on the benefits of multi-agency learning opportunities in comparison to what exists in terms of learning within the organization. So we've been working with ICRC, UNHCR, MSF, different organizations to work on the design of some specific learning pathways or learning opportunities simply for the people from the same agency, but which is a chance since the beginning. We've been working in providing more opportunities in terms of multi-agency, which is an important, I think, format that can bring, I told you, when we start, people come. Please do come in. Welcome. Sorry.
There was a sabotage.
Yeah.
Fix
that again, huh?
There was a sabotage. There was
we have to start again. So let's wait for people. We have plenty of time. We have 90 minutes.
I didn't know this one. I have to use it more.
It's nothing.
It's nothing.
Oh yeah, of course. So we'll keep it tight.
So we do a restart. Huh? So good morning everyone again and welcome. Welcome to a session on the learning approaches to build the capacity on for humanitarian negotiators. And the angle we're going to look at today is a bit specific on the multi-agency approach. So we will discuss the benefits and the challenges of the multi-agency approach in terms of learning. I have a few colleagues that I've invited specifically for that session that will share with me. We'll give you a chance to know them in a moment. But it's a very, how to say, it's not an informal moment, it's still a formal moment, but it's a conversation we want to have with all of you, with community members or actors in the field, but also with learning providers and from the humanitarian environment and others. We have Lila with us as well from Kingdale. That's also important. So we will have this conversation to see a bit what will come out from such a session for the future for the humanitarian actors. But maybe I wanted to do something. I'm not sure. Do I have to show the QR code?
For a second, if someone in the room needs to transition, everything okay with English? Yes? Great.
Good? Yeah. And I wanted to, let me check where my video is. So just to set up the scene, I wanted to share a video. I will try technically if it works. But it doesn't seem to. No. Okay, we do that. Celui-là dans le slide. I always said that earlier when we.
I promise you it was working before you arrived.
Of course. It always does. It always does.
Always does.
You need to negotiate a lot.
Absolutely.
With technology.
Technology.
Good luck.
Which is the hardest.
Yeah. Saying to them, don't help me.
Okay, we'll find a moment to share the video and I'll tell you what it was all about. It's often like this, huh?
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I will start. It's fine now. Yeah. So we come back to the slides anyway. Well, we wanted to show you a video. I'm not sure we're going to be able to make it, but when I press on it, it doesn't work.
Come on, don't make it complicated.
You have the video out of the, connect it here, just the file.
Or on YouTube, you can find it. But no, that's okay. Let's forget about the video. Let's come back to.
It's gonna be a closing video.
Yeah, if we manage. Yeah, so I was saying, so we're going to talk about the multi-agency, and this video was interesting. When I was a committee member who used to be also one of our colleagues within CCHN. She worked with us in the past, but she was sharing about how beneficial for her was the multi-agency setup provided by CCHN. So meeting over members from different organizations, learning from their own challenges as well, learning from each other, and solve this aspect of peer learning that was essential in this video to set up the scene. And what was interesting, and we will come out probably to that discussion, was how this learning setups provides more collaboration, more coordination in the field when we talk about humanitarian action. So that's a nice platform to be able to engage in this conversation. So forget about the video, now we've done the QR code. So in terms of contributors, I've invited Joseph Cretera from OCHA.
The photo is a little bit.
Yeah, it's a normal. That we get the advantage. From OCHA, we've worked together on a few sessions on negotiation within one of the programs. You will tell us more. We have Alain Lempereur as well from EUI, who's been working as well on several moments on learning in terms of negotiation. And we have Panos as well, the executive director of Jelly, and an important person as well for us is Christine Fab, who's going to be our key listener, so who will be synthesizing all the discussion at the end of the session to discuss what we will be tackling in this. And I have also invited two committee members, and Malak Fiyami and also Abdul Manan is with us, and we will have a chance to discuss and to listen to your experience from this learning setup. So, on my side, just the objectives are three. Taking stock of the different opportunities, so that's why I think not only those that I've invited specifically, but other organizations and learning providers are here with us to that meeting. We'll also participate in this and would be very useful for us. So taking stock of the different opportunities that exist in the field. Sometimes when I'm in the field and people are talking about civil military coordination, I say, yeah, we have Joseph from OCHA who's providing this, I put them in contact, and etc. And with Joseph, it's the same. So we have also facilitators involved in the different events of Joseph as well. So we try to look at what exists on the ground and how we can find an interesting collaboration in this. The second point is about identifying benefits or advantages of multi-agency, so discussing this. And the last point is about maybe, and that's the big task that we are giving to Christine, is about identifying potential learning pathways and collaboration on humanitarian negotiation to provide a pertinent offer. So trying to have a very collaborative approach in this field to be pertinent for the actors in the field. So CCHN, it's about fostering a community of professionals, promoting critical reflection, learning and exchange, and developing a stronger analytical framework. For us, I think what is essential is the main objective of our learning offers is about developing the community of practice. It's making sure that this community is there and they learn together, they engage together, and they have this sense of belonging together, so to ensure that learning in the future. So, as an example, you can see it's really about the community-based learning, trying to give that safe space where people can collaborate, discuss, exchange, discuss about their action in the field as well, and learn together. And that's a key and essential element for me in what we are working at CCHN. Here, what is interesting is, this is, I think you have seen it in the learning catalog of CCHN or in one of the brochures we have had on our booth. So you see the learning pathways within CCHN. You see in the middle the peer workshops are the entry gate of all our events to have people join the community of practice, but also to engage in that learning journey. I always consider that learners are responsible of their learning journeys, and they need to have a clear picture of what is before them and how they could engage in this. So you will see the green elements are what CCHN is strictly providing to these community members through thematic session, training of facilitators, applied negotiation workshop, soft skills workshop, advanced humanitarian negotiation workshop, and we have also the executive program that is targeting more senior leaders in the field for that. So this is the green part, this is what CCHN is providing. We also provide a safe space, which is the yellow part, which is basically to provide, to give space for the community member to engage in initiative or learning initiative like we've seen yesterday. So to organize events, and Abdul Manan and Malak, and I think Mohammed is there as well, can share their experience at some moment about how they took that initiative to contribute to the development and the learning of humanitarian actors in the field. And these are also essential for us. We don't want to be only the one providing, and I think Joseph has had the experience of having several facilitators from the CCHN community to contribute in this learning program that he's providing in the field as well. So I think it's an essential part. And you can see the red dots are basically what we provide in terms of advices or support to specific agencies when they want to develop learning opportunities around negotiation, but simply for single agencies. So for us, it's not to confront the two, it's really to see how we can work together between multi-agency approaches, single agency approaches, how can these two support each other into the learning journey of our colleagues. I think that's the essential part for us in this as well. So this is the CCHN learning pathway. And what I would like to do now is to ask these two questions at the same time. So what are the opportunities on the ground? And what are the advantages and challenges of a multi-agency learning approach? So I'm opening the floor to our first contributors and to the whole room after that. Who wants to start? Panos, you want to?
Sure.
Okay. The floor is yours.
So thanks, Taufik, and really big thank you to CCHN. It's been a fantastic 2 days. The bar has been set very high, looking at the previous session, so we'll do our very best to have a robust conversation. So I'm Panos Mumsis. I like to present myself more as a humanitarian practitioner, having worked for the last 35 years, primarily with UNHCR, but also the last 10 in capacity as humanitarian coordinator in multiple locations. So I'd like to share some reflections across the challenge that Taufik said to all of us. What I'd like to do is just share, first of all, some personal reflections looking at the sector now, where we are and how we're doing. Maybe share one little example from my experience I've had in Syria, and then say 2 words about what we're doing right now. So looking at our sector, looking at the humanitarian sector, and talking, Taufik, about the multi-agency approach, I'd like to say that clearly we're a sector that we're not designed for collaboration. It's a sector that we have many little agencies that were created with different mandates along the time, and we're all together trying to be one orchestra singing to the same tune, but we're not. There are many things that pull us apart. The first thing is competition for money. We all have to go and try to get there. Of course, each organization has its own mandate, and that has to be respected and supported. But this doesn't mean that following the mandate should come to not doing our very best to try and ensure a more togetherness in terms of what we're trying to do together. We're competing for space. Who goes first to start whatever project in which location, which also is another element that pulls us together. There is competition between UN agencies. There is competition between INGOs. There is competition between INGOs and national NGOs. There is competition on all fronts, and I think this is really something that pulls us apart, sadly, despite the fact that we have the most compelling, convincing purpose of why we're there. I think nobody questions the motivation, the desire. However, when it comes to make it together, very often we think my organization is the one who can make it, and I know I have to make sure that I'm not, we have the space, we have the funds, we have the ability to do what we need to do to deliver on the best possible way. So having worked in multiple organizations, and a few jobs back we were doing this peer-to-peer review of strategic direction of operations, the one common recommendation that we came to all the countries we had gone is this lack of togetherness. Often when I look at humanitarian response plans, of course, we always say there is 85 organizations or so many of us who work in this mega crisis. Often the plans look like we have stapled together many little plans to make a little response plan. Of course, we have sub-agreements and collaboration and so on. But when we look at negotiations specifically, I kind of find that we don't maximize enough the leverage of our power together. We don't do everything we can, and I think there's a big difference if I go to negotiate on behalf of my organization, whether I'm a UN or an NGO, and very different if 85 of us come all together to try and push for what we're trying to do. This collaborative leadership, collaborative spirit, it's there, but not enough. Not enough to bring it togetherness in terms of what, and this is where this multi-agency approach, I would say, at the moment, we are below what I would say the minimum that we should be doing in terms of where we need to be able to leverage and bring the best possible results. My last position before I started working with Geli, and I'll explain about the Global Executive Leadership Program in a minute, I was the regional humanitarian coordinator for the Syria crisis. As you know, the level of complexity in operations we work around the world, if I look over the last 2-3 decades, has increased dramatically. The politicization, the multiple actors, the polarity that exists on the ground, the security access complexity, the financial constraints that also there have made it for our world more than ever before super complex in terms of what we do. And despite that, that hasn't pushed us enough to work a little bit more together. In the Syria crisis, a 3.5 billion operation with more than 300 actors, areas controlled by government, non-state, northeast, northwest, cross-border operations, the complexity was enormous. One example we had was at the height of the crisis, we had the hard-to-reach besieged areas. These were really the most dramatic situations where we couldn't reach people, they couldn't get in, we couldn't go inside, and we entered negotiations both with government and with non-state actors to be able to do it. Clearly, and I won't mention neither organization nor which parties, but clearly there was a policy of divide and rule. Let's deal with everyone separately and let's negotiate with everybody separately. And of course there were political agendas. There were political agendas on both sides. Don't help them, don't go there, they are this, they are that. And of course, it became very clear in my capacity as humanitarian coordinator and talking to the members of the family that there was this divide and rule approach, which was really quite dramatic. So we got together and we decided actually with everybody, we would negotiate for access, for assistance, for evacuations, for everything we wanted to do for these people who were in extreme desperate situation in this hard to reach and besieged area on a collaborative, on a collective way. And it made a huge difference. Not only were we able to do it, but also we're able to defend more the IHL principles. We're able to say, we're not negotiating with you just to favor your people, but actually we want to be able. So this approach, and it's not just on access, I just gave an example on access, but it's also in terms of many other aspects of the humanitarian response. In a world where the level of complexity, the challenges we face are such that no one entity can do it alone. No one organization can intervene to bring the results that we want. And therefore, partnerships. Partnership doesn't mean heavy bureaucracy on coordination. Partnership means effective way to bring the most relevant actors together to be able to bring the results that we want to bring on the sector. I think that over the years, yes, we collaborate more, but we also developed sometimes a little bit of a monster in terms of the coordination of what we try to do. So keeping it light and focused is really extremely important to bring the results of what we're trying to do. Now, this collaboration or lack of togetherness, as I call it, sufficient togetherness to be able to bring results, led me to be the founding director establishing the program that I'm working now. It's the Global Executive Leadership Initiative, GELI, and not jelly, not a wobbly jelly. The French, the Francophone approach of jelly, it's GELI. But really it's a project that we can put together in terms of looking exclusively at leadership of UN agencies, INGOs, national NGOs, ICRC, Federation, National Red Cross Societies, and national NGOs, and looking at what are the most important skills that are needed, but to build them together. Our goal is to break silos, is to bring partnerships. So we run, actually I'm delighted together with the European University Institute, and we have here Alain Lempereur, but we also have Christian Fermier in Florence, European University Institute in Florence, together with the CCHN, and we have Taufik that is here. We run this negotiation for senior leaders trainings, and actually we go to the field in Nairobi, Dakar, Amman, Bangkok, Panama City. Some of you in the room, I think, know or have attended them, with the view, yes, to give the skill, but also how can we work together to bring this better approach to some negotiations. We also have another program on influencing skills, lobbying, advocacy, influencing, in partnership with the London School of Economics, and I'm delighted to see Hugo Slim sitting there humbly in the back, who is really one of the key faculty facilitators on humanitarian diplomacy, but it's about how we can influence from a leadership strategic point of view together. The key word on this is together. It's breaking silos and bringing the UN, the NGOs, the national actors together on having an approach. We have a third program on women leaders, inspiring women leaders. Again, the same idea, breaking the silos, bringing us a little bit together in a better way to be able to approach what we're trying to do to bring the best possible results in terms of where we're going. So this is a little bit my reflections. In terms of the programs we do, they're open to all, so feel free to find us online and to apply and be part of it, or for your colleagues in the field. But the key message really when I look into the analysis on the multi-agency is that we are not there. We're not where we ought to be. And the second part I would like to highlight is opportunities for growth, ample. I think we have a relatively small initiative. We've had 600 leaders at the executive level go through our program so far since we started. We have done more than 25 cohorts, and we constantly have one after another going out to the field to be able to offer them. But clearly we need to back out the opportunities, and I think it's a leadership skill. It's not a technical skill, it's a mindset. It's a mindset we need to adjust ourselves, and we need to make sure within the culture of the organization, within the system that we all work, that this mindset that adjusts to better kind of togetherness while respecting the mandate and the space of the organization. It's not either or. You need to do both. You need to work internally with your organization, but you also need to work a lot more. At the moment, if I was to say what is existing, I think probably 88 or 90% of the time we work internally to our organization, and maybe 10% on bringing this collaboration. And I think there has to be a shift in terms of this multi-agency, cross-silos, cross-walls approach to bring the best results.
Thank you very much, Bernard. Thank you very much. I think it's a good insight about what exists through this initiative. And now we're going to zoom in a bit on the learning aspect, on this aspect of this approach. I'll let Alain go on.
The negotiation field has been out there for decades, and you could sometimes say centuries. The Harvard program on negotiation, for example, at Harvard has developed training concepts for the last 40 years. We just celebrated the 40th anniversary of PON. But what is so interesting is that the negotiation community, scholars, practitioners, have not paid enough attention to humanitarians. But as Tufik said too, humanitarians have not paid enough attention to negotiation. So we are really at the point, right, at the crossroads when you see that this double ignorance is overcome, right? I think that there is a wonderful opportunity to start seeing how humanitarians can irrigate negotiations, and that's the humanitarian negotiation field, that's the CCHN, but also how we can even amend, complement the negotiation theories that have been developed out there for a while. So there's a dilemma we are talking about here, right? The dilemma here is, should we go in-house, what we sometimes call intra-programs, or should we go inter, right? And that's really the choice very often of what the CCHN has done. For 30 years, I've done both. So I really see the advantages and sometimes the challenges of each, right? And I think Panos has really outlined wonderfully the advantages of the across programs, rather the inter programs. So I will not necessarily I'll talk about that too, but I'll be a little bit sometimes the advocate's devil. I'll show the advantages of in-house and also maybe a multi-agency program. First, what I wanted to stress is that in terms of concepts, tools, etc., so I'm trying to find the mouse. Sometimes we try to get rid of mouses. Sometimes we try to find it. So here it is, right? So what I find interesting, whatever program you follow within your organization or across organization, you will see that the models, the concepts, the tools are very similar, right? So I've suggested somehow the need for integrating both. If you want to be a surgeon, you first study medicine, and then you go into surgery to become a surgeon, right? It's a specialty. And I think we shouldn't think 1 second that the humanitarian negotiation field can be a standalone without integrating the negotiation concept. That has been somehow my point since even the CCHN existed, when Claude Boudherlin and also Peter Maurer were discussing this issue. We can't get rid of the baby with the bathwater, right? So what is on the left? The importance of relational moves. We have heard it so many times. Coalition building, trust building, the importance of managing emotions, all of that we know. Then there are problem-solving moves, right, that are specific, but we have heard about red line, we heard about amber lines, so there are a lot of the concepts that are immediately borrowed from the negotiation literature. Also, what we see is a need for preparation in terms of process, the need to manage meeting, to zoom out to a negotiation campaign, and to zoom in on the current moment. So all of that is available in the negotiation literature. But what is missing is what is specific to the humanitarian negotiation setting. And I think that's where the CCHN has done a wonderful job. Because you could see that if you take the example of a mandate, and Hugo this morning was talking about even negotiating on behalf of nature. But it is a very strange mandate that humanitarians have. It's not simply a mandate from the top down, let's be honest. It's also from the bottom up, right? It's the communities which will help you with your mandate. And sometimes you will self-assign a mandate. You're waiting for the headquarters to tell you what to do, and you will do it anyway. Right? So I think that it's not the usual mandate, the mandate of a humanitarian. The red lines, as we saw yesterday, right? It's a concept where I need to be careful using that term, right? But we start using orange lines and red lines. You said amber light. I don't. It's just because I'm colorblind, so I'm never quite sure what that means. When you show these wonderful orange, red, green, I can't even know which circle it is sometimes. But anyway, you see the point, right? I will use some orange lights as an anchor, as we say in negotiation, as my aspiration. Hopefully it will be a reference for the negotiation, but I know that's not the real red line. But I need to be clear about what this red line is. So, for example, I'm amazed by the clarity of CCHN concepts on red lines, the categories of red lines, also the capacity to bring best practices from the field. The NIVASH grid is also, in terms of zooming out, is a very powerful tool, and so fascinating to integrate both. So I think we need at the same time a strong universal model, or transversal model, general model, however you call it. That's what I call the responsible negotiation approach. Right? I think that the big difference between humanitarian negotiation, for example, and commercial negotiation is that you care about more than just yourself. You're really trying to negotiate on behalf of others, right? You're nearly intermediaries, nearly mediators in a negotiation, right? But also you might negotiate for the next generation if you bring climate questions in as part of the picture. So what I see is that it's not only going this way, but it's going the other way around. Right? I see the power of really building on the best existing theory, use humanitarian practice, and enrich negotiation theory in general too. It goes both ways. Practice, negotiation theory, and practice work very well. When Tufik presented the three major points, goals of CCHN, and maybe we should go back to that. I would say that what we are trying to do at PON, for example, I've done it for 30 years, we also try to have operational tools, which I think also the NIVASH grid is. But training is helpful. It is only if the next day the person is actually doing what you build together with them. So I'm very attentive to two complex models that are not operational. Right? I want people to have a prep grid that they can use the next day, that they can have a meeting script that they can do the next day, and all of that, right? Okay, so I move forward because I have no time. That's always the same story, right? We know that. And I go to maybe one or two more slides, maybe only one, and Tufik at some point disconnect me. Always difficult, I promise. But there are there are advantages to the single agency model and the multiple agency model. So I'm a big fan, like Tufik, like all of us at CCHN, and like Panos at Geli, I love the multi-agency approach. And so you have a lot of good reasons to do that, right? You offer a general framework, you have a community of practice, you focus on negotiation individuals, you might focus on organizational challenges, but that's not the major goal, right? It helps with coordination, we know that, networking, all of that is true. It fits smaller organizations. If you're a small organization, you can't put together an in-house program. It's nearly impossible, right? So extend best practices. And by the way, don't tell the donors because there are some in the room here, but you have less control of donors on what you're doing. Isn't it? Or sponsors, whatever you call it. It's more bottom-up. In a way, it's more bottom-up, that approach. But you see, there are good reasons to do in-house programs, and that's the right column. There are some practices I will not share with other colleagues of other organizations. I'm sorry, I wish I could, I won't. It's too sensitive. So when you talk about safe space, and I know there's a lot of work on creating a safe space, right, at the CCHN, but I tell you, there are some organizations will not share the core challenges sometimes, and that's where we need in-house programs. The most important aspect on the right side, right, is the following, I think. You need to build a negotiating organization.
True.
That is not about individuals, my friends. True. I don't know if Larry Zescan wrote a wonderful book that's called Build to Win, about world-class negotiating organizations. What is that? Maybe as an individual, you know the power of the Vasha grid, and you know how but nobody cares in your organization. You know it. Nobody cares that you do it. I'm telling you, if you start doing in-house programs, and if it's part of what we call the KPIs, key performance indicators, everyone will do it. Everyone will do it. It becomes a part, it's a process, right? We don't stop providing tools, and honestly, maybe we should not do polls like this, it should be anonymous polls, right? But do people, everyone in this room knows the Naivasha grid, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay, now you tell me, how many times do you use it per year?
Many times.
No, not many times. How many times?
Actually, this year, 4 times.
4 times. 4 times? 4 times a year? This is not serious, my friend. But don't be surprised by that. My problem is not that we know what to do. The problem is that you don't do what you know what to do. You see, the problem is not about knowledge. It's not about analytical skills. It's not even about operational skills. Right? It's about doing what you know that you have to do. For logistics, you know how logistics works, and you do what logistics works, how it works. But the problem of negotiation, you have such a big gap between what you know you have to do and what you do. And that's where in-house alignment of negotiation process with negotiation individual skills is very key. Okay, so last point, the good news, if you can do both, do both. Right? Because all the problems of what is on the left could be solved by what is on the right and reversely. You could see that. Don't feel like sharing, share it internally, it's a smaller circle. If you feel that you need more freedom of your people, more creativity of people, inter is better. Right? So I think there is a combination of both. So last slide, and I don't even say what is on the slide, but it's obvious from what I said, right? We need both. We need to stress the commonalities beyond the differences, because the commonalities are much bigger than otherwise, right? Advantages and flip sides to each. Possibility, whenever you go for, as a sponsor, even as an individual who needs to go for it, you need to see where you are in your organization, what kind of organization you have, where you are in your career, and that might well be that you need to go for inter-programs or intra-programs. Sorry, there is myself and
No
my
worries.
computer.
No, thank
Thank you
you.
very much, Alain. So we've seen a bit of insight about the impact of this approach to learning. And again, thank you, Alain, for stressing as well the necessity of the single agency learning aspect. That is important. I want to shift now to Joseph to carry on the sharing experience.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. I will speak a little bit slower for two reasons. I don't have so much to say. And secondly, I'm coming from the same district as Arnold Schwarzenegger. Now, I'm a little bit jealous. So I'm working on humanitarian civil-military coordination, sometimes a little bit more humanitarian, sometimes a little bit less. I'm a little bit jealous because like last week in Nairobi, people are talking about GELI, people are talking about CCHN, and for sure we want them to talk about us. About the United Nations and about OCHA and our program. So I'm within the Civil Military Coordination Service, and yesterday when I sat in this auditorium, and thanks again for inviting us and the brilliant sessions we have here, I saw this piece of art on the left-hand side with the 4 modernizations and the 6 things we have forgotten. And I picked up 2 headlines. The first one was harmonizing the soup, and the second one, defend the rich harvest. And I think that's what I'm doing in the last 25 years. Each of these training events, we have quite a harvest. And the question is now, how do we use it? How do we defend it? How do we make it something which plays into these opportunities? And how to eliminate the weaknesses of our programs. To address the topic of multi-agency capacity building, training, learning, I have to go back a little bit in the history of our program. As we started in '96, I came at the end of the '90s, and the '90s, the program was very much about patronizing an audience. It was very much top-down. We told the people, and it was always related to humanitarian development, peace and security. We never had an entire humanitarian audience or an entire military audience. It was always together. So I had a little bit of a smile when the Nexus debate came 5 years ago, because we did it since the '90s. We always brought these 3 different types of stakeholders together. It was very much about patronizing an audience. Sadly, the big events, Afghanistan, Iraq, they helped us to define our approach, and we got the word dialogue into our definition, and we started a couple of training modules related to dialogue. The first one we started was communication. The second one, a little bit later in the 2000s, where the multinational peacekeeping operations came up, where I toured around from Sierra Leone to Eritrea to Liberia, Cote d'Ivoire. Now, we thought we need a model where we do, where we persuade, where we influence each other. So we added on the influencing part, and then again, thanks to the pandemic and COVID, we had time to reflect on what we are doing. And there is where we started our collaboration with CCHN maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I can't remember when it was. And this helped us quite a lot. Our content and our approaches, they changed in this 25 years. There is no question about it. We didn't have a Ukraine, Gaza, other emergencies, Sudan. So we changed quite a lot. And here is where we then got the negotiation piece into our curriculum. We also focused in the last 10 years quite a lot on outcomes, on learning outcomes, and less on inputs. 20 years ago, it was like, I have a couple of nice slides, let's show them. And now we always ask ourselves, what do we want to get out of this 50 minutes or 90 minutes? So the learning environment changed in the sense, and this I have it from someone for 20 years ago who told me, Joseph, how you teach is equally important to what you teach. We have to find a method where everyone gets engaged. And yesterday we spoke about the community of trust, and when we deal with non-state armed actors, military forces, humanitarians, development agencies, UN agencies, now when Panos is talking, backflashes here, because our first definition was about minimizing the conflict within UN agencies. And then the legal office said, no, we must call it inconsistencies and not conflict, because there is no conflict in the UN. But actually in our assessments, we realized there is a lot of conflict when it comes to this topic. So in our learning environment, we want to mirror the operational environment. Junior, senior. I mean, last week, again, fascinating, the generals from South Sudan or from Rwanda, how they contribute to this sort of peer learning. That's what we didn't have 20 years ago. This was in the evolution of our training program. Now, when I come to the sort of multi-stakeholder training, how we call our training program, I mean, we see, and I paid attention to Ellen's advantages and disadvantages here. For sure, OCHA, some of our managers, they say OCHA first. We want to train OCHA. And luckily, no, my supervisor, my section, we resist. So far, we say no, civil military coordination without the military doesn't make sense. We must engage, and here we changed our approaches significantly to give enough space to all of these actors. We realized that most of the time, those with the innovative ideas, they are more in the listening mode. I saw the active listening and active speaking. They're more in the listening mode. So the art in our approaches is to get all these opinions and ideas out of the people. So we are saying diversity is strength, and diversity not only across organizations, but also, junior, senior, people coming out from the academies now with great ideas, and we are trying to bring this diverse audience together. The questions what I got early on in the training program is, how comes you accept a student who just comes from the university in your training program? There are these senior people in it and heads of offices, etc., etc. And I said, well, the student is an investment. The person with 65 years old, I'm sorry, we learn from them quite a lot. I mean, I appreciate that, we learn from them, but the investment, if someone is retired already, is not there anymore. Maybe I have them for the next 20 years now, but the student we have for 40, 50 years now, if we get them at the right place. So we invested quite a lot in junior staff and in this sort of humanitarian development, peace and security. So we brought them together, and the big risk these days, and here I hear some humanitarians, I hear them loud and clear. It started in the Iraq crisis on the do no harm. Some of my colleagues said, no, we shouldn't give this do no harm, the tools from Mary Anderson. I'm not talking about collateral damage. We shouldn't give this to the military. They will politicize it, they will militarize it, they will use it to their advantage, and we will. I think in the meantime, it's exactly the opposite. I think it's exactly the opposite when we are diving into the Naivasha grid, and I use it every week. When we are diving, or some elements of it, not the entire Naivasha grid. It doesn't matter at the end. If I look at the iceberg or the Klingenthal bin model, it doesn't matter. If I go to the reasons and to the motives why a military is doing this or that, and the values, I think it's beneficial. At least that's what we saw in the practical part of the negotiations. So we are grateful. Our weakness is still the front line. I mean, yes, we are in Kenya, in Thailand, in Fiji. We are at this one. I think we are not close enough to the local communities and get local community actors into our program. And this. Sometimes we have exceptions where we get this frontline negotiators into our program, like Bausam, since she's standing there. Then we are lucky, and we benefit quite a lot from this cross-verticalization, what I call. And thank you again, and I return 1 minute of my speaking time to the moderator.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Joseph, and it shows this interesting experience that you have, not only having different humanitarian agencies, but having also humanitarian military actors in this that showed, and I've attended a few sessions on this and providing the Naivasha grid in terms of learning. It was very interesting to also exchange with military actors on how they perceive the Naivasha grid and how they perceive humanitarian actors negotiating against them in a way, if I may say this. Yeah. Thank you very much, Joseph. So we will have time, promise, for questions and comments, but before that I want to give the floor a bit to our committee members. But I have an important person for that will be contributing. It's Stephanie, you all know her. I won't introduce her. But I think it's when we have thought about the session, we we wanted to give that moment about how the community of practice has been developed, how Stephanie, who used to be also a community member before joining the CCHN, so she has very interesting insight to bring for us, and then we will listen to our colleagues as well.
Thank you, Tufike. Hi, everyone. Very good to see you. I'm just going to start by saying that I frame every one of my conversation with the Naivash grid, so I use it 42 times a day.
Well, I'm sure if you were a priest, you would use the Bible very often too.
Okay, now I just wanted to say a few words about how we started the community of practice in Europe, because I had the honor to start it with a few of the colleagues who are in the room now. Apostolos was one of the first community member of the community in Europe. It started in Greece. We had the responsibility to organize a workshop in Athens to understand better what was going on in the refugee crisis, the refugee response, what type of negotiations humanitarians were having, and also put them together in the same room so they can have this space to exchange their experiences. And while I was talking with the people in the workshop, and I remember Apostolos was one of them, he told me, yeah, but you should look also in the Balkans, because this is very interesting. It's a route. You should connect organizations together. So this is what I did. I followed the advice of Apostolos, and we connected with few organizations in the Balkans, and we really focused on how can we support all the agencies who are engaged in the refugee response in the Mediterranean and the Balkans, Greece, Serbia, Bosnia, and so on. And after a while, in 2022, there was an escalation in Ukraine, as you all know. And then the staff who were working in the region started to move from organization to organization and work for the refugee response, but in the neighboring countries of Ukraine. So they were always connecting with me, and I remember Victor was one of them. Also, they were connecting with me, and they were like, "Oh, do you know if we have community members in Poland? Because I have a mission with Save the Children." Or do you know if we have people in Moldova? So it was very good to have this network and to be able to connect people together. And people were truly happy to meet CCHN colleagues, even if they were not from the same organization, but they were in the same context. So I think I have 3 positive points for the exchange that we can see in the community of practice. The first one would be understanding the mandate of the colleagues in the context where you work. I'm a humanitarian. I was working for a different organization, and honestly, I couldn't understand the mandate of the other organizations in my context. It was not clear. It was, they do something about displacement, but I'm not sure. So I think these workshops really helped to clarify everyone's mandate and every organization's mandate. We also focused on the issues, the humanitarian issues, and we defocused a bit on our programs and projects. So this is also an interesting balance to find. The second one is the connections that we create, as I mentioned, and this can sometimes help to solve problems and to help in the negotiation. And I'm going to give you a very specific example that I witnessed. We had this workshop for search and rescue at sea. And for the first time, we had in the same room people working at sea on the boat and people working on the mainland. They were not in touch together. So this is one thing, when you go at sea and you rescue people, what's happening after? Like, how can we protect these people? And the organization, they were not connected. And it was tensions. You mentioned the tensions and the competition, the lack of trust, but putting them together in the same room, I really saw that one of the person from a rescue operation talked for the first time with someone from the UN who had a complete different mandate, and they help each other. So they connected, they exchanged WhatsApp, they helped each other. It was very nice. And another history. Do I have time? I'm speaking a lot now. Okay, I'm not gonna give the other example, but at lunch, if you want to know the other example, come to see me. Yeah, I'm gonna stop there, but I feel that these three elements are very important, and we see it live in not only the workshop, in the work that we do. These connections are truly important, and I also had the experience when I was a community member to finally understand what my colleague in the same context was doing in a CCHN workshop, because I had no time. I was too focused on my programs and so on. So now I'm going to leave the floor to the community. We're going to have a question after. I just want to leave the floor to my colleague before. So we have Malak. We're going to start with you, and then we're going to go with Atumanan.
Hi, so it's Malak Khiyami. I work in a local organization in Lebanon called Amel. It's not Amal. So I'm a head project manager in the organization. I've been working with Amel from 2019, and I've always been involved and engaged in negotiations, not alone for sure, with the community members, with the staff working on the field that are part of the community. I have been doing this for 3 years until I joined CCHN. Here I was planning to say it in another way, but since you mentioned that the system and the sector are not designed in a way to foster collaboration, I've always felt this. And yesterday when Muhammad was speaking about the gap between the donors, the international NGOs, the UN agencies, and the local organizations, I really felt that, and as I am part of AML. However, this didn't last until I joined CCHN. When I joined the peer workshop, it was a total different perspective. So I joined the workshop in Lebanon in 2022, and it was in collaboration with the LHIF, which is the Lebanon Humanitarian Forum, Lebanon Humanitarian International NGO Forum, and LHDF, which is the Lebanon Humanitarian Development for NGO Forum. And the workshop included lots of people from different backgrounds, different sectors, and different organizations. And since I entered the workshop, I felt disconnected from, I didn't feel I belong only to AML. I felt I belong to these humanitarians. We come from different backgrounds, from different sectors, and from different organizations. However, we share the same challenges, we have the same counterparts, and we have the same opportunities on the field, but we never realized that until we did this workshop. And when we are all familiar with the Naivasha grid, I felt the power of humans at first. Like when we were together discussing the Island of Agreement for the same case, or the the red lines or the bottom lines for our counterparts, we all felt that we are part of this negotiation. And even if I'm a healthcare worker, I didn't feel different from any colleague working in the production, in the GBV. So we were so innovative, we were so creative. We helped each other in discussing the same case. And when after this workshop ended, we stayed in touch, and we really learned from each other. We had partnerships, we had the same counterparts, so we knew how to deal with our counterparts and how to conduct a negotiation in another way. However, as it was also discussed that it's interesting to have this negotiation skills in the organization and inter and intra. Automatically, since I'm a national staff in a local NGO and I work with community members and with staff on the field that are also national and local, I automatically transferred this knowledge and these skills to the team without even trying. So I was engaged with them in the negotiations, we delivered the training. I was also discussing yesterday or 2 days ago with Stephanie to maybe pilot some tools or some program to a specific context, to a specific project. And this was inspired by a program that you have in CCHN that you work with the families of missing people. And this is very important to interconnect the organizations and to build the capacities within the same organization. And as Stephanie was mentioning now, that in all contexts, as we know that humanitarian workers, we have a huge turnover. So when you build the capacity of one staff, it automatically transfers to other organizations, and it will transfer to the community members. So, and later on, when I did the TOF in Amman, I had colleagues from different countries and working in total different contexts, but we also shared the same experiences, the same challenges, and sometimes it was more challenging than what I did, and this is how I learned. And this is how I learned that what I bring to myself will help my organization, and so the success of my organization is the impact that we leave on the people in the community that work with us, and this is what will last at the end, and this is what they will retain, because I will leave and they will stay and they will develop their community. So that's it.
Yeah. So thank you. So it was really pleasure to listen from our panelists, and I think that maybe I'd like to start in that way is that the challenges of negotiation has been impacting all sorts of organizations, whether it's a donor, whether it's a UN agency, whether it's an international NGO, whether national or local NGO altogether. Because what usually, let me introduce first myself. This is Abdul Mannan. I am from Bangladesh. So I work for a local NGO named SHARE. And the abbreviation is wrong. I'm not going to. So I mean that. So I work here in my organization as a deputy director, and it's really happy to have a good journey with the CCHN for the last 4 years, since 2020. Okay, so I back to the point that I have raised. So what I have seen that whatever the donor is providing fund, usually the joint response plan, most of the fund goes to the UN agency and also some of the international NGO, but at the last point in the field, the national and local NGOs, those who are implementing the program, and I mean, they had to face lots of negotiation challenges. So if local or national NGO are not able to achieve the project outcome, the UN international NGO are not able to meet the requirement of the donors. So, and donor will not be happy the money they provided for, the humanitarian challenges solutions to bring forward. So, I mean, what we have found that, so as a local NGO member, I first got this peer workshop circulation in one of our NGO platform, and I have applied and finally selected. So in the workshop, what I have seen that, so there's a lots of agency people there. There's the UN agency people, there is the international NGO people, national NGO people, and the local NGO people there. And it was the COVID era, so that's why we were really engaged, though it was the online peer workshop. So there was a good exchange between us, and finally we felt that it's a good platform. We can, maybe we can help or we can exchange to each other regarding our negotiation challenges. So finally, in a peer circle discussion, so James was the operation director at that time. I'm not sure whether it was planned or not. So he just put a message that, so sorry, there's some engagement, so you people just discuss within yourself. So then we the people felt that, okay, so we are the people, we are having the similar sorts of challenges, negotiation challenges. We can bring all together so that we can help each other. And in that way, we have developed a community of practice for the Bangladesh, and we immediately, open a WhatsApp group. It's still inactive. So more than 10 admin nowadays, and more than 70 members in our WhatsApp group. So, I mean that, and then we also have, I mean, the understanding that we can somehow, I mean, sit together to discuss some of the challenges. So maybe the people are not very much, I mean, they're comfortable to discuss all of the issues. There's the organizational some issue, but there is some piece of information they can gather from each other, which really help for their negotiation perspective. So if I could cite an example, so there is 33 camps in Rohingya humanitarian response now in Bangladesh. So 1 million refugees we are hosting now for the last 6 years. So there is some camp in charge who are the big government people and all the people who are working in each camp, they had to do everyday negotiation for the humanitarian access and also providing the support and services. So, for example, one people working in the camp 20, another people working in the camp 30. So, I mean, they can exchange each other. What is the, what is the nature of the CAC? How, what is his values? What is his perspective? I mean, it's really helped the people to understand explore the iceberg of his or her counterpart. When these people, transfer to that camp, and these prior, the information and the knowledge help him for the better negotiation with his counterpart. So it is on the community part. And we also have felt that we should sit together in some perspective. So, and we started in that way that we usually, not all the people, 10 to 20 people, 2 or 3 months, sit together and we informally discuss to each other what are the challenges we are facing now. And usually the food and coffee, they're provided by some of the members, those who are willing to pay there. So it's really working there in the informal setting. Now come to the whole community perspective. Okay, so I'm very quick. So we have done one peer workshop in last 2020 on-site peer workshop, and then we also have delivered one, the peer workshop for the protection focal of the camp. So in that way, we bring forward the sector all together. So it was, led by the protection sector, which is hosted by the UNHCR, and then all the people, all the protection focal there. So there's some UN people working as a protection focal. There's some international NGO people working as a protection focal, some local and national NGO people working together. So what we have done is that, so we have contextualized the tools of the CCHN for the protection principle. And we also have, developed some of the ideas about the linguistic challenges. So maybe some local or national NGOs people may not be able to follow the English conversation and all other things. So that's why we nowadays we found that we have got different other resources other than the CCHN tools and other resources which already kept in our thing. So last point, I'd like to say that, so I'm the local NGO representative, but in all the peer, workshop, on-site workshop, I work there as a lead facilitator. So it's a sorts of feelings for all the communities that local NGO people are not the backward. They can come forward and they can work for the better community altogether. So I'd like to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Abdullah. Very interesting experience around this training that we're providing. So I think we've reached the time for comments, questions, additional interventions, and etc. So Christine, you want to say something?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I could just jump in, and I've been the fly on the wall in this discussion as the kind of active listener, and I just want to say it's been, I think, you're learning by doing in this very moment. The way that this conversation has unfolded and the way the conversation was structured is actually, this is one of the first times I'm in a learning environment in which people are actively doing what they purport to practice in real time. So I just wanted to say that that was my initial observation, and I have more. But I like the way that even the structure of the session was a reflection of this of a community of practice. That's great.
Thank you very much, Christine. So we have the hands. Yeah, I forgot your name, and then Zalal, and then who else we had? Yeah, Felicie, and Mokhtar, and
At the end.
Lina as well. Yeah, please.
Like me to start? Thank you.
As you like, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't want to break this nice mood here in Harmony, but I'm just coming from facilitating a workshop with humanitarian organizations about localization and decolonization of aid. And as I was listening about this learning methodologies, I heard few things that stayed in my mind, like we need one multi-agency approach, one mindset, one togetherness, and help to clarify each other's organizational mandate into one language somehow, or maybe one common understanding. That's the issue. Is one of the challenges in localization and decolonization of aid that we try to address is the barrier of language. And here we are thinking beyond the clusters and the multi-agency approach. We need to think of local communities and local actors, how they approach development, and how they deconstruct the concepts and tools that we develop here in Geneva, and whether this language is comfortable to them or not. Now, from the perspective of learning and training, how do you integrate this one learning approach with today's discussion about localization and integrating the diversity of learning experiences within the local communities and local actors?
Yeah, is that two connected questions? You want to answer, Stephanie?
Great question.
If I may, I'm having something complementary to that also.
Just get a few series of questions.
Yeah, we have, but maybe on this point, or you want to answer later? Okay, we carry on. Zalal, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm Zilal from Syria, working with UNHCR Syria operation. And I have 3 comments, actually, which is coming from the field, actually. We have, first of all, because we don't have these multi-sectorial missions, for example, the emergency response, you don't have to think twice. You need to respond immediately. And you need to sit and go immediately to the field. But sometimes some agencies, they are super slow in their responding. And the one who actually enhanced the response or enhanced the warehousing or anything of the agencies, they are going to be the one in the front line. So they will have the privilege with the government to facilitate any kind of access. And we know that the emergency response is one of a key to have access to any other projects, and this is what happened in Syria. But that will block other agencies, and they will have issues with the government. And this is what's happening now. So I do agree that different mentality, different mandates, different approach to the emergency response actually making the aid getting slower to the beneficiaries, and sometimes they don't get the approval to go. This is the first point. The second point is about the partnership agreement. Unfortunately, the UN or INGOs, for example, in the context of Syria, they are doing separate projects because they are funded by separate donors, etc., and they are not sitting together. So sometimes they go to the government separately. That's confuse the counterpart, because they can see 2 projects in the different areas, and why you are targeting this place and others they are targeting that place. It's the same project. That delays a lot of approval and the access later on. And beneficiaries cannot wait for our technicality to be solved. So this is another point I need to. The third one actually is completing her point about engaging the community. Because sometimes the projects that we are actually submitting doesn't make sense. Because there is no one assessment saying what's those people they are in need actually. We are just forcing them to our mandate, just bringing them items, throwing away these items. And sometimes we need to at least a little bit improve the items or to change it to be designed based on the population need. And we don't care. I'm sorry to say. Sometimes we don't care. We need to please the donor, and we need just immediately to respond. And that's without engaging the community in the DCQ negotiation. We don't see the impact. The people, they are upset. They are complaining. They are saying that we don't open the door because you are asking many questions. You are bringing something useless to us. We've been asking you for this and this. You are not bringing the same item, etc., etc. And that will block not only our access with the government, but with the beneficiaries, the most important community. We need to actually have an access with them. In my opinion, this is because of the lack of coordination and collaboration between the agencies. And we don't have this, this mindset of we need to sit and negotiate between each other and have one agreement, and then we go. As my colleague said, that it's kind of greedy. We need to compete. We need to do something. We need to put our visibility outside. We don't care actually what's going on the ground. And this is we faced in the emergency response of the earthquake, the recent flooding in a government of Tartus, and the recent conflict in Deir ez-Zor. So Syria is still under emergency, and we need all together to be there. But unfortunately, some is working separately. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this point. I think it will be interesting to see how we can measure the impact
Yeah.
of this multi-agency approach towards more coordination in the field and how we can witness this in a more realistic way. Thank you. Felicia, please.
Thank you, Raj. I'm Felicia, I work for INSO, and just like a complement to what was said is, it's not only about inter or intra, but it's a lot, and I will join you on that. It's a lot about who you train and the target audience. So not to show off, but just to share a practice. We worked, it was complex to do that, but we really worked in like deconstructing concepts and try to understand what were the universal denominators that we were having in this negotiation based on discussion with some of our partners. So INSO is like having 1,500 partners or something like that. So I've not questioned each one of them, but we worked with many local partners in countries, any kind of NGOs, and try to understand what were these common denominators. We simplified many concepts, and we also built a different level of trainings. Like, oh, you are a field aid worker, and you are making key negotiation. You are conducting them, and you are a key actor, and you are in the access and in safety and security of your organization. We have a course that is for you, and in which, sorry for my colleagues of the CCHN, we are not presenting the Navy grid. We are presenting something else, but like that has so many common grounds. I mean, with it definitely, but just like how to make it accessible and how to be be just the same as what you were saying, be the transmission belt. So not only have a nice grid, but like make it useful for people. So just to share this experience, it was like long. It was painful, to be very honest. But I'm super happy to share that. I'm happy to be in touch with some of you if you want to discuss about this like universal common denominators on negotiation. We don't have a book on that. We are not at that good level, but happy to share experience on that.
Thank you, Felicia. I had Mokhtar, and then we're going to listen to Lina, and we'll come back to you, Apostle. Mokhtar, please.
I don't know how to start, but I'm in favor of all what have been said. But I'm trying to go maybe to the bottom, to the lower levels, and to see all what have been said in a different lens. Like, I think we need to look first to the context. So context, especially in emergency, sometimes pressurizing us as a humanitarian to respond quickly, to hire even staff quickly, who maybe have no experience. And this leads us to focus maybe in the human nature, hiring staff who need a proper induction, proper trainings, and sometimes we forgot the competition, because I'm a staff with international NGO or UN, and I need to show myself as to my supervisor that I'm an effective one. So I think managing the competency among staff also is very important to be looked at. The other point I'm thinking about is the sharing information, and you mentioned it, but I'm feeling that there's a problem of sharing information inter-agencies and intra-agency. So between agencies, we are not sharing enough, even we have a lot of platforms, but sometimes we are feeling to keep this information that will be good or not to share it. And this is always making a lot of difficulties. And I think OCHA, they understand this very well. And inter-agencies, sometimes keeping the information at higher level, it's not helping the frontline negotiator to implement what have been agreed at the higher level. So sharing information also, I'm thinking is very, very important to look at how we can ensure these channels, and sometimes with sensitive information, I fully understand, but we need to send clear message to the people working on the ground. This is from my side. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mokhtar. Thank you very much.
Thank
you for having been there with us.
No, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me. And I always realize how good it is for the soul to listen to people that are very good at analyzing the problems and then really try to come together and solve them in a way that's inclusive and respectful and mindful that the aim is progress, not perfection, because it's very difficult in these times of uncertainty to think of the perfect intervention that solves all of it. Dream on. But I really am reminded how great it is to sit together with people that work on capacity. So thanks a lot for hosting this session. And I really hope that this can continue, these types of conversations, because what's great is that I hear from your discussion on the mindset behind collaboration. That's exactly what we see when we work with leaders in the field, that they all on paper would say, I'd love to collaborate, but then the question is how? And then you have to have a good space to talk about the how, etc. We've really seen as well, that I hear from the other colleagues, we started 8 years ago with humanitarian negotiation training, and it didn't take long to understand that at Klingendahl Institute, maybe I should have said who we are first, but we are International Relations Institute that has a long-standing experience with diplomats, that it made no sense at Klingendahl not to connect the humanitarian negotiators with the 11,000 diplomats that we have worked with in the past 40 years. And I want to also echo your comment, Stephanie, that sometimes the unintended consequence of your work is that you give people the key to a door. That they, through the name of the connection, CC Jenkling, and now it doesn't matter, Gailey, listen, it's not Jelly, Gailey, yeah, sir, absolutely. I know the important, Klingendahl is not an easy name to pronounce either, so I know the sensitivities around that. And that you give them that key. So, our connection is this. And those are just beautiful consequences that go beyond, you now have a tool, whatever you call it, a PIN, a Nevasha, the INSO model, so it's just fantastic to reflect on that. And I don't want to change the focus of the discussion to inter or intra. All of that's important, and I think great comments have said, and I recognize them all. But one thing that we are now at Klingendahl is also the crossroads of the multi-sectoral learning. Right? You've talked about multi-agency benefits, and I like that Mr. Huyteren also said in the beginning, we thought, of course, it has to be multi-sectoral. And then what I also feel at the conference is that we know there's a lot of uncertainty about the questions that need to be asked, right? Maybe we know which actors need to be in the room, that maybe we don't, right? But which questions are we now asking about the capacity strengthening? And I know many of you find the nexus word, you start to shake a bit, but is that the multi-sectoral framework that we need to come together around? Because otherwise, the divide and conquer comment that we know when you do a lot of negotiation is number one tool, and that you need to resist, etc. Is that the next question? So I really hope that this is a place to continue the multi-sectoral question, not to hijack the very important multi-agency capital. Is it super important? Because you can't do multi-sectoral if you don't have your house in order, right? But maybe this place is also a place to share what are the questions that the security sector is asking, because they all come to Klingendahl, right? And I'd love to find a way to knit a new program, a new project. Dutch political time is not the most favorable, but we are patient. We are patient. It will come, times change, etc. So I just wanted to share that, gratitude and an invitation for continued input on the multi-sectoral questions that I think are uncertain and urgent. And that's not a nice combination.
I really want to echo, and I think somebody else said it earlier, I think that should be the first step towards a more collaboration together, more reflection about what we could provide in a pertinent manner for the humanitarian and beyond. That's going to be a second maybe chapter. We have Post Thomas.
Yeah, I'm very.
And Hanadi and Muhammad sorry.
Yeah. Sorry, mine is just a reaction.
A short reaction.
Yes, it's
Okay.
okay. I promise you it's very short. I think a very important prerequisite, when we talk about organizations, humanitarian organizations collaborating together, is that humanitarian organization understanding how they work internally together. And this is one of the biggest challenges also. It's this internal collaboration to increase their operational efficiency, which we all suffer from. I work for ICRC, so Hanati Mahdi, I work for ICRC. I come from protection background, detention, which is not a shining example on working together, with other organizations. But I think this is also very important. How can we work together inside the organization and prevent siloed approach in an organization before we start working together?
That's a good point, because I wanted to introduce the session talking about the fact that I was first working in protection in ICRC, so very close towards our team, not talking to others. Then joining LND, ICRC, then it's only ICRC staff, and then joining the CCHN, and that was a blast for me, to be honest. Having different humanitarian organizations, NGO, local NGO, international NGOs, sitting together and working together, that was a great revelation for me in this sense, in terms of learning. And I think, and now we're talking about multi-sector, so we're moving forward in this pathway, and these are important points. Apostolos, I haven't forgotten you.
No. It's fine. I think something that CCHN have been teaching us is to be patient and to be. It's fine. No, that's a positive one. No, I've been a very proud member of the family for the last 4 years, and I would just to bring very positive feedback and a bit of a challenge as a second point. The positive feedback is that CCHN platform, or the meeting of the people through the CCHN, have been a meeting of a family. I call it CCHN a family, because in the family you can bring everything, the good and the bad, the dirtiness and the clean and everything, so you say everything. The question is a space that it is different from other platforms because there's no competition. Of course, still among individuals, everybody wants to show has a bigger, longer experience, that's something different. But what is a common thing is that everybody brings the challenges of negotiations, reaching, accessing people. Now, of course, CCHN have been also used as a place for mental health support for people. People, they don't understand it, but there is a bit of sessions that people have been bringing their institutions, challenges that they face. Yeah. Now, what I see as a challenge, personally, I see that those challenges need to go back to the institutions that people represent. Because at the moment, this is a blending situation here, and then people again, they brought everything here, but it's not a role of the CCHN to bring it back to the institutions. The CCHN cannot go back to ICRC, UNICEF, MSF, whatever, to tell them that they need to do something out of that. It is important that members of different institutions have been joining the community, there are 8,000 members, but this culture has to go back into the institutions. And I think it's not always easy, if you're not a leader in the organization, to bring that culture gradually into that. And I think what another positive thing, on a positive note, is that CCHN have been a place where other actors have been meeting together that will not be a place to meet. Bringing different ideas and challenges on the summit, or bringing ideas meetings and taking from them. And I think giving the opportunity to network. Not only getting the key of how to open a door in Moldova or in Greece, but also how to work and communicate with others. I think the networking aspect, negotiating aspect, have been building up a network of trust. So CCHN is a platform of trust because there is no competition. I'm not fighting. At the end of the story, if you go to a platform run by a donor community, everybody wants to show that's better because there's money. And I want to take the money for the institution. There's no money. And CCHN is clear on that. So I think these are the positive stuff. But then probably it may be a way for thought for the next session, what CCHN wants to be. Because then if the role is humanitarian negotiation, then suddenly it becomes a psychosocial space, a family, whatever. But I think happy to meet everybody around and to learn from CCHN. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Apostolos. 1 minute, Mohammed, and 1 minute to Musa. So we have Stephanie to answer the question, and then we close it with Kristen.
So I just wanted to share something complementary to what Malak mentioned. In 2021 in Lebanon, we recognized that there is an increase in access constraints, both with OCHA, CCHN, AMIL. We conducted the first training that was conducted by CCHN in person in Lebanon, and it was just 3 days before the Lebanese elections. We insisted on conducting this training because no one knew what's going to happen after the elections. So we did it despite the concerns from the DSS and them not being happy and just telling us, no, we're not going to do it. And eventually we managed to do it. So far, we have conducted 3 trainings in person in Beirut and more online. And I don't want to say I'm happy, but lately during the response in South Lebanon, I have met several of the community members that received the training that are working together on managing the access issues that we're all facing in South Lebanon. So at least I would say, like, also one thing is that we're speaking at least the same language in the meetings so that we can reach the common goal.
Thank you very much, Mohammed. Musa, quickly?
Okay, thank you. I would just like to share an experience of that. Sometimes I say that more than what CCHN can, it's what we can do it. So I experienced that when I get the training, I see most of people around me which don't have access to the trainings, and today hundreds of people are applying for the trainings. So there is less space, but the need is wider than what CCHN can. So in 2022, with one local organization we created in Burkina Faso, Centre de Leadership des Études du Sahel, we suggested to CCHN to create a space for less experienced people to learn. So we suggested a simplified curriculum adapted to people which have less than 3 years of experience. Because we have some organizations which send, which recruited people and send them to not in 3 years, but tomorrow in the field, and they are obliged to face to different counterparts and root counterparts sometimes. So we adapted the curriculum in accordance with CCHN with adapted tools to beginners, and we trained the beginners from 1 to which have less than 3 years, and we let CCHN go with those have 70 years, and we trained at least 18 people for these 3 years in 3 cohorts. And we are proud of that, and I expect anyone or everyone trying that, and we are okay to share.
Thank you very much, Musa. We have 2 last further questions.
Yeah,
Stephanie, and then I don't know how
I'm
you...
just going to comment on what Musa said, and then I'm going to leave the final words to Alain, okay?
But please don't leave. We have Christine after to close.
Very brief, I promise.
We go for lunch together, huh?
Yeah.
Promise.
No, just thank you for mentioning your project, and to maybe to go back on what Felicity and I'm sorry. Rima, I'm sorry, mentioned. We believe that it's very important to constantly adapt to the people we are supporting. The Naibash Agreed is a frame, but you need to fill it with your experience. And this is the way you need to see it. And I think and I have few examples that I could share with you also, because we, as Musa said, we work with different type of public. And we constantly interview, adapt, and try to make sure that it's not there's not one only way to learn. Okay, so I'm available at lunch if you want to come and speak with me. I have few examples.
To follow up on Rima's question on localization, maybe 4 best practices I've seen put in place. If it's an in-house program, for example, in RC 2014. They brought in Mali, we brought in the room local organizations. And very much what Gali does with the 25% quota. And I think that's a good idea, whatever, right? On the question of how you mainstream, Maiduguri program that we did with Mercy Corps, about you could bring, it's immediately a training of facilitators, with a clear responsibility. So it's of course right, from different organizations, but then each person will have the responsibility to mainstream it in their organization. Third, a good practice is it's add 1 day. So we did that in most of the work in the field is done by proxy in Nigeria, in the Borno state. So we did one extra day, volunteer one day for local organizations. And where, for example, you will add also maybe one session on the principles, humanitarian principles, because all of that may not be so well known. Last point, it's online. And that goes back to the possibility of using online training. We did that with Gaza, very complicated. I don't even know how it's possible to, it would not be possible to do it today. But for example, by doing it online, you could have a local facilitator, and you would use, if it's by Zoom, but the best is to bring Tufik or a person or Ahmed, someone who is an Arabic facilitator. But you could, I found it fascinating to use the interpretation channel. So we were able to run 8 to 10 sessions in Gaza because we didn't have access. But online is also something we need to continue to do when we don't have access as a trainer, for example.
Thank you very much, Hannah. So we will have to, at lunchtime maybe you'll catch up. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, good.
We give a floor to Christine so that we can close afterwards.
All right, so I'm the last thing standing between you and lunch, and it will be difficult to distill a very complex and comprehensive and rich conversation. But I think what stood out to me, and I think I also, like Joseph, was mesmerized by this tree on the wall in the room downstairs. And I think this idea of the two things that come out of this discussion, harmonizing the soup and defending the rich harvest, are really the two kind of key takeaways that I see. So harmonizing the soup, this is about the challenges, right? These are about the challenges of competition, interagency, individual, competition for space, for money. This is also harmonizing the soup, to me, seems like reaching the front line. So I'm hearing a lot about not reaching local actors and spaces well enough, or challenges of reaching local actors and spaces, or all of the hierarchy in the organization, or all of the actors in the field. So harmonizing the soup there takes kind of many connotations, but it seems like in the spirit of this idea of working towards progress, not perfection, which was a phrase that I also liked. The work that's being done by Gelly, by CCHN, by everybody here is work towards harmonizing that soup in some way. And defending the rich harvest, where does that come in? And I'll go back actually to harmonizing the soup one more moment. That's the inter and intra as well that Alain pointed out so nicely and also came up in the discussion. What about defending the rich harvest? So here, one thing that I really picked up on from the conversation was just the immense amount of field experience. So we heard about, Panos's experience in a complex emergency like Syria with 300 different humanitarian actors on the ground and $3.5 billion and a patchwork, Byzantine patchwork of control and access. We heard about the really interesting case study of connecting the dots along the migration route in Greece and in the Balkans, and that you couldn't just do this in Greece. You really needed to understand all of the actors along the route. And I could go on and on with the examples that just came out of this discussion here today, but defending the rich harvest to me is really bringing this case-based practice and these examples into action. And into the classroom in a peer-to-peer approach where we really learn from these cases in a meaningful way and bring all of the relevant actors kind of into the discussion through more of a case-based framework. And then last thing on defending the rich harvest here is that there is a rich harvest in the sense not just of the experiences that have been had, but the individual mandates that you were all working with. I heard a lot about the need to not only defend and uphold, but also articulate and learn about one another's mandates. And so part of defending the rich harvest is building that network in which there's a safe space for peer-to-peer learning, in which you can not only, you can learn about one another's mandates, but also learn about what other people think about your own. And so I guess I would like to leave on the note of one of the things that I always try to convey in the classroom, and maybe I should have started by saying, so I'm the Director of Executive Education at the European University Institute. I oversee a portfolio of some 40 different platforms, of which Gelly and some of the excellent trainings that Gelly and CCHN and everybody have been collaborating on are just a few. But I like to say to students in my classroom, when they come to my classroom, I like to say, we do start with learning objectives and learning outcomes. And one of the most important for me is always that you should come away from the learning experience being able not only to convince others, but also be convinced by others. And so when I hear what some of the things that Alain said about these tensions in humanitarian, the double ignorance between humanitarian and negotiations, I think it's being able to convince others and also be convinced by others where we're working towards. So I will leave things at that, and I will say thank you to all of you. This was really enriching. I came away with also a big package of notes that I'm going to go type up because this was really great. Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining the session. And, we have lunch now. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. This was so.